At the 2023 Austrian Grand Prix, chaos erupted right from the qualifying rounds. A staggering 47 laps were erased for exceeding track limits, shaking up the grid and sparking fury among drivers.
It was very chaotic today, a bit of a mess to be honest. Especially the second red flag, I think that was really unnecessary today.
But the action didn't stop there. During the race, more drivers got hit with penalties for the same issue. Hours after the race ended, officials handed out 12 more penalties to 8 drivers after digging through over 1,200 reports of track limit breaches. All this is just because of track limits. So, what's the big deal with these track limits? Let's find out. Every racetrack is a blend of smooth tarmac and curbs designed to challenge drivers and their machines. When drivers are hunting for the perfect lap, they push the boundaries, using every inch of the track to their advantage. It's all about finding that sweet spot, the optimal racing line that keeps their momentum high and saves their tyres from excessive wear. The challenge comes when there's too much room to play with outside the defined track. Usually, if there's grass or gravel beyond the tarmac, drivers instinctively avoid it. After all, no one wants to slide into the dirt or get stuck in the gravel. But problems crop up when the track is surrounded by wide curbs or extra tarmac, often included for safety reasons or to accommodate other types of racing like motorbikes. This extra space, while intended to make racing safer, can tempt drivers to push their boundaries a bit too far. To keep things fair and competitive, strict rules are needed to define what counts as the official track. This is where the concept of track limits comes in. According to the FIA F1 sporting regulations, specifically Article 33.3, drivers are expected to make every reasonable effort to use the track at all times and may not leave the track without a justifiable reason. In plain terms, they need to stay on the tarmac. The rules are clear. If any part of the car remains in contact with the track defined by the white lines, then it's within limits. But once all 4 wheels go beyond those lines, the driver is considered to have left the track, and curbs, interestingly, don't count as part of the track. This whole issue of track limits has become a hot topic recently, largely due to changes in how they're enforced. Under Michael Masi, the previous FIA race director, there was a bit more flexibility. Masi's approach often included the curbs as part of the usable track, giving drivers some wiggle room to explore the limits of their racing line without immediate penalties. Masi's departure brought in a new era with Niels Wittich, who took a stricter stance. Wittich's guidelines are crystal clear. The white lines mark the edge of the track, period. For instance, in his pre-event notes for the 2023 Austrian Grand Prix, Wittich emphasised that the painted white lines are the absolute limits. If a driver crosses these lines completely with all 4 wheels, they've exceeded the track limits, with no exceptions. This is a stark contrast to Masi's more lenient interpretation during the 2021 Austrian Grand Prix, where only crossing beyond the curbing was considered out of bounds. This shift to stricter enforcement has significantly impacted how drivers approach their laps. They can brush up against the white lines, maybe even put most of their car over them, but the moment all 4 wheels cross over, they're in violation. This has led to a new layer of strategic thinking for drivers. They must balance the urge to push every boundary with the need to stay within the strict confines of the track. So, how does the FIA enforce these limits to ensure fair play? Practice sessions are a bit of a free-for-all when it comes to track limits. If a driver exceeds the limits during practice, the consequences are fairly straightforward. The lap time is deleted. This means that no matter how fast the lap was, it wouldn't count if the driver went off track. The benefit here is that drivers can explore the limits without worrying about penalties, helping them understand the track's edges and plan their strategy. However, repeatedly breaching limits can still impact their data collection and race preparation. Qualifying is where things get more intense. Each lap counts, and exceeding track limits can have significant consequences. If a driver's fastest lap is invalidated due to a track limit violation, it could mean missing out on advancing to the next qualifying session or starting further back on the grid than expected. One of the trickiest parts of qualifying is that violations at different corners have different impacts. For example, if a driver exceeds track limits on the final corner before the pit straight, not only is the current lap time deleted, but so is the next lap. This is because the driver might gain momentum by exceeding the limits, giving them an unfair advantage on the following lap. During the actual Grand Prix, the stakes are even higher. Drivers are allowed 2 instances of exceeding track limits without immediate penalty. This leniency recognises that in the heat of racing, it's easy to occasionally slip beyond the lines without malicious intent or gaining a significant advantage. However, On the third violation, the FIA shows a driver a black and white flag, a stern warning. It's a signal that they are on thin ice, and any further breaches will result in penalties. The fourth violation triggers a 5-second time penalty. This might not seem like much, but in a sport where fractions of a second can decide races, it's a significant setback. If a driver continues to ignore the limits, the penalties escalate. A fifth violation brings a 10-second time penalty. Interestingly, after the sixth violation, there's a reset of sorts. The seventh and eighth violations go unpunished, but the ninth brings another warning, and the 10th results in another 5-second penalty. This cycle of warnings and penalties keeps drivers constantly aware of their track positioning. At the 2023 United States Grand Prix, a total of 76 lap times were deleted due to track limit violations. While many drivers commend the swift response of the stewards, they also emphasise the importance of finding a more permanent solution. Valtteri Bottas expressed his thoughts, stating, "It does make it slightly easier. There's just a bit more flexibility on the line, but still, the issue persists because it's a track where there are multiple corners where going wide grants you an advantage, and everyone is pushing the limit. Therefore, there needs to be a firm boundary, whether it's a gravel strip or a sausage curb." Speaking about sausage curbs, the FIA introduced them at Monza in 2002, and they resemble elongated, rounded speed bumps positioned at the edge of corners. By 2010, these raised barriers become a more common sight on tracks. The purpose? To act as a physical deterrent, discouraging drivers from exceeding track limits. Sausage curbs are strategically placed at fast corners where the temptation to cut across is high, and the risk of going wide is even higher. Despite their intended purpose, sausage curbs have sparked significant debate within the racing community. Many drivers argue that while they might keep cars within the limits, they also pose serious safety risks. Take Lando Norris for example. The McLaren driver has been vocal about his concerns, especially after witnessing some harrowing incidents in recent years. In 2019, during a GP3 race at Monza, Alex Peroni's car was launched into a terrifying flip after hitting a sausage curb at the Parabolica corner. Daniel Ricciardo, known for his candid insights, reflected on the incident by saying, "It's weird, and you would never think that curb would have such an impact. Unfortunately, sometimes you need something to happen so that you realise the consequences. I'd never looked at that curb thinking of it's a danger or a threat." This unexpected risk factor of sausage curbs has led many to rethink their presence on the tracks. The physical danger they pose became undeniable in 2021 when W Series driver Abby Eaton fractured 2 vertebrae after striking a sausage curb at the Circuit of the Americas. Eaton described the incident as ridiculous and questioned the necessity of having such curbs on the circuit. The debate didn't end there. During the 2022 F2 feature race at the British Grand Prix, a dramatic collision involving Roy Nissany and Dennis Hauger brought the issue into sharp focus once again. Nissany forced Hauger off track, causing him to hit a sausage curb, which launched Hauger's car into the air. Agonisingly, Hauger's airborne car landed on Nissany's, with the Halo device, a protective feature in the cockpit, saving Nissany from potentially fatal injuries. This incident reignited the conversation about the role and safety of sausage curbs in motorsport. In the coming years, the FIA will develop safer techniques to prevent drivers from exceeding track limits. However, for the time being, Formula One drivers must adhere to the existing rules and regulations. What's your thoughts about the F1 track limits? Let us know in the comments section below.